Okay, we're on.
All right, gentlemen, welcome to Spin Training today. Please, I would like to have your attention. No reading books in the class. Being a little bit difficult today. Good. So, let's start with the spin. What is a spin? A spin is an aggravated stall that results in auto-rotation. The auto-rotation results because of the unequal angle of attacks of the wings. And the key to remember when we're doing spins is that is aggravated stall. So when we're flying, we're going to fly today and do some spins. The reason why we're going to do all this is because we have to get some mental things. A lot of the pilots, also my first time when I was doing spins, I shouted on the first one. I'm not going to lie, because we are used to flying airplanes straight and level. Or we're not making turns, and we're not used to be flying inverted or anything like that. So we're going to take some fear off the way, and also to recognize it and prevent it from anything if it happens to us unintentionally. So that's why we're going to practice unintentional stalls and why we do them, just in case if it ever happens to us. So we can start about how do we set up for the spins. And one more thing I want to mention about a spin, it's a corkscrew. It's when you do it, it goes like kind of like this, the airplane, and that's how it looks from the outside. But let's do how we establish it. The first thing we want to do when we start a spin, we must be in a safe altitude, because we want to make sure that we're going to be is safe. We want to recover by 3,500 feet. So safe altitude, it's we have to have minimum route to recover 3,500. We're going to do the standard procedures of every maneuver that we do. We're going to perform our clearing turns. Then we're going to configure the airplane. We're flying a Luscombe today. Luscombe that is not equipped with flaps. So we're going to do the before maneuver checklist. We're going to apply carburetor heat for this maneuver, because we're going to be going pretty. We're going to lose some altitude, and we want to keep it nice and heat. So we're going to start configuring the airplane just like a power off stall. When we did it a couple of weeks ago, we're going to get a reference point. So that straight across. Let's do this side better. Then we're gonna, no flaps on this airplane. We're gonna reduce the throttle. We're gonna you see it all right? Okay. We're gonna get reduce the throttle. Then we're gonna adjust our pitch to maintain altitude. And as we're getting down to stall speed, we're gonna cut the power to idle. And as the plane goes to stall, we're gonna add full right. Well, if we're going to do a right spin, we're going to put full right rudder, and the airplane will enter a spin, which is an aggravated stall, and we will start going out. That's the corkscrew that I'm drawing here. We're going to let the plane go to about 2 full rotations, and then what we do, if we haven't done so, power needs to be to idle. When the power is in idle, then we neutralize the controls. And since we're in a right spin, we're going to use opposite rudder to correct the spin, which in this case will be left rudder. When we do the left rudder, then we get back to flight. Then we're going to adjust our pitch to come back to increase the back pressure, so we can come back to normal cruising altitude. And then we're going to add power and come back to regular procedures. 1 minute, please. Now, as we are applying back pressure, what I want to mention is that we don't want to do it too abrupt. I don't want us to be scared when we up there. We want to do everything nice and slow. Let's do everything step by step, because if we do everything fast, it might get in some for some things we don't want to do. We're just going to talk a little bit further down the lesson. Okay, that's one way to do a spin. We're going with a power off stall, and let's speak a little bit about the completion standards for this maneuver. It's we're going to have the anxiety factors. It's a goal for you guys to feel better about make you feel better for the flight, how you feel afterwards. If you're feeling better, you're not going to be scared about going inverted anymore or anything like that. So the aerodynamic, you need to know some of the aerodynamics of the spins, like what is a spin, outer rotation, the unequal angles of attack on the wings, and why it happens. We're going to have to use the airplane that we have to use for intentional spins. It has to be a specific airplane for it. Like the last one is spin. This airplane is made for spins, so we have to use we have to use the airplane that, like it says, 152, something that we can do. We cannot do it on a Piper. So when you go to spins practice, remember to always make sure that the airplane is qualified for spin training. Remember the weight. You know, some airplanes, you must have half tanks, or you must have some specific weight when you're doing these maneuvers, because we're putting a lot of load factor on the airplane when we do this maneuver. So you want to be within limits, and whatever it is for the utility category or acrobatics, for specific, type specific. Another thing you need to learn about is when we can get we can get to an unintentional spin, like when you're going for approach to landing, or where you do this where spin might happen, for example. So you get some familiarity with where it can happen. How to recognize and recover from an imminent or unintentional spins. You have to, the examiner wants to know that. How we enter the procedure and maintain, which we just spoke, set up and do the maneuver. Make sure you keep oriented during a spin. You know, some pilots, you can get easily disoriented when we do the spin because we are inverted. So we know where exactly we are doing the maneuver, and if we're going left or right. So this way we know how to recover from it. And one more thing about compressions: make sure you are in altitude. Recover, or you have enough altitude to recover from a spin. You don't want to do it in a low altitude, because if you do it in a low altitude, then it's not good for, you're going to end up at the ground. So you want to have altitude to be safe. Let's speak about some common errors that pilots usually do, and when they're doing intentional or unintentional spins. One thing is to fail to establish a proper configuration prior spin entry. You have to prepare the airplane just like the manufacturer tells you to prepare the airplane, to set it up. During the spin, so we failure to make a full stall before the spin, or just not do the spin the way you're supposed to. To enter a full spin, you have to make sure that you actually are in a spin when you're doing intentional spins. Another common error is to failure to close the throttle when a spin entry is achieved, with result of losing a lot of altitude during the maneuver. So you want to make sure that the throttle is closed. This way, if you think about it this way, let's say you're flying low altitude and suddenly you have full power and you get in a spin, then if you have the throttle in, you might lose a lot of altitude. So you want to close it first thing. Now the common error is that it's a failure to recognize indications of an unintentional spin. Uncoordinated flight combined with a fully stalled condition and use of incorrect aileron or rudder. They make the mistakes of not, let's say we're in the right spin, and instead of neutralizing the ailerons, adding ailerons in the opposite direction, making the stall more abbreviated. So make sure you use the opposite rudder, or not the right rudder or left aileron. This way you want to abbreviate the stall more. And that's the next common error: improper use of flight controls during spin entry, rotation recovery. During entry, not applying rudder in direction of spin. During rotation, not applying full elevator back pressure, full rudder and neutralized ailerons. That's another common error. During recovery, not applying full opposite rudder to stop the rotation. Not applying sufficient forward elevator to break the stall condition. Not using coordinate flight controls during recovery. That's some of the common errors that happen on the recovery for the spin. Common error: disorientation during the spin, loss of orientation with outside reference point to use to determine for the rotation. So how many rotations do we do? You become disoriented. And failure to distinguish between a high-speed spiral and a spin. Now, a spiral is mostly a spiral is the difference between a spiral and stall is that the spiral the main difference that spiral is not a stall. We're not exceeding the critical air goal of attack, whereas the spin we are in a stall. That's why the difference it's mentioned here about the steep spiral and the stall, because they're very similar maneuvers that you hit, but spins is actually used in the stall, and the steep spiral you're not in the stall. Okay. So some pilots we get to confuse these two maneuvers. Okay. Another, it's excessive speed or accelerated stall during recovery. After spin recovery, being too cautious in pulling out of a dive, resulting in excessive airspeed. Then applying too much back pressure when recovering, resulting in a secondary stall. This is some of the errors we must be careful. Let's say you get too panicky and you pull abrupt, then you will end up in another stall and you will get back to the stall. So you want to make everything smooth. Make sure when you're recovering, keep all the controls smooth. Like I said, step by step. First, cut the power, neutralize the ailerons. Recognize if we're going the spins to the right or to the left. Use opposite rudder to correct the spin. Apply back pressure. And to summarize, that's the common errors. Now to summarize it, a spin may be defined as an abbreviated stall that results with a turn after rotation. When the airplane follows as downward corkscrew, just like we did it here, as the airplane rotates around the vertical axis, the rising wing is stalled more than the descending wing, with the creating of rolling and yawing and pitching motion. The airplane is basically being forced downward in gravity, rolling, yawing, pitching in a spiral path. That's what a spin is. Gentlemen, that completes the lesson, and now I would like to ask you for your questions.
Hold on.